Generosity. I just want to share a flavor of how numerology can play a role in your life and how you organize yourself within the elemental Hypertech protocol in which you learn. It's important to see the world as a body, as a form, something that is living. It has electricity and magnetism, and that is our connection to it as well, is we exist off these same principles of electricity and magnetism. And we bring these components of friction into our bodies to make ourselves. And we use the elements, and those elements have different regions associated to them, different dimensions. So let's talk about the dimensions in which you find within the system, which you're learning here today. There are 12 major regions or dimensions, if you will. However, there is a 13th for the more advanced, and perhaps we'll go into a little bit of that a little bit later. So here in the system in which you're learning about today is there are 12 major regions which are exactly like the Zodiac. And those major regions actually have flavors to them and feelings, and they provide a very specific influence into the system in which we gather and collect memory, time, and space. And this is how we access things. This is how we organize things through these cycles. And in that process, I'd like to just break down a few of them for ease. Of course, the first level to the process of dimensional learning, which are the regions of what I call mirror math, right? As above, so below. Time being the odd, or the Zodiac being the even. And this is just spiritual math that I'm just reminding you of. I'm not telling you anything you guys already know, but if you want to go deeper into it, you can check for yourself and see how these things fit within your system. So within the 12 dimensions of mirror math, you have these different hours. And through these hours, we have painstakingly dissected each one here on this channel for those who may come later to want to learn how to bring in the magical along with the practical within their lives. Because this education, this knowledge, this learning system could be very useful for you, especially for the younger generations who really want to organize themselves organically in a way that is in harmony with the environment without the use of machinery. See, in remote viewing, it became a project that was no longer necessary in a lot of ways because we now have made machines that can do the same thing. Through trend analysis, they can predict the future. They can go years out based on what production is happening right now, where electricity and energy and magnetism is accumulating and being produced for profit or for service. That's why it's important that everything goes on the blockchain, because they'll have a much more refined and defined approach to their future modeling. Through future modeling, you can control the present. Through the accumulation of the past and understanding all of the aspects that are going on, you can recreate the past. Eventually, if you have enough energy that's being produced in that, because you've digitized so many things in the past, you can actually recreate the frequency and harmony and have access, like time travel, through those portals, if you will, and you can see certain snapshots and have access to certain things because there is a tapestry, a fabric that has been recreated in the digital world. This is a value of blockchain technology because it links everything together like a filing system. It is slow, but we have other components that we add on to that actually go out and find and access certain things through keywords. This is the same system as remote viewing. So people will find this channel at some point and want to learn this, how to do this with their bodies instead of having to rely on outside forces that does the same thing. So that brings us to, what have we learned so far? Where are we on the map of this for the new people who are coming on board, for the new, younger people who are open-minded enough to organize their life in an elemental way, to see the world as an electromagnetic universe and not one of explosions and big bangs like you hear me speak of. A world that is infinite, not a world that is confined or in a prison. A world that is open, not a world that is closed. So these concepts change your reality, change your perspective. So what we have done is we built the foundations. The process that we are in now, to give you an idea of where we began and where we are, is now we are building the skeleton. This is why we had to go private, because this is only for a select group of people who can do this, who should have access to this. You have to go through a process in order to get to the next level. I'm sorry to tell you that, but this is why there is secrecy in the world as well, unfortunately, why there are private things that need to take place. So you began with the foundations of the abyss itself. This is the first stage that reflects in the Zodiac. We're going to go through 12 of them because everything is in harmony, as above, so below. So the abyss. The abyss is important to enter into because you have to be like a blank slate. But you have to realize that every resource around you is available to you. You can just reach out and grab it and make it, because in the spiritual world, the abyss is actually a kingdom. It's a kingdom of all the things that we have thrown away, we have trashed, we no longer wanted. So it exists in this field of the abyss. Also, nothing is there too. It's just, it's everything and it's nothing. Because you have to be aware of it. You have to provide it energy in order for it to manifest before you. And this is where you get the idea where thoughts themselves create forms in the world. So the world looks the way it does because this is the way that our thoughts have programmed it to look. All of us, the sum total of all living creatures that have the same access to the same senses we do, all of the elements who have accumulated these elements into bodies, into forms for temporary use, because these bodies belong not to us. We just make them out of the material we find around us. This is the abyss. Next, we discussed sex. And this is important because this is the paradise, or the pain, or the pleasure in which you find yourself in when you move into this desire to be something, anything. And that is where you begin to have a connection to things, okay? Then we spent actually a lot of time on the next level of our foundations, which was what we would call the astral. And this is the relationship component to it, why relationships need to be built. Because once you have a connection, right? I find you, you find me, we're, feeling each other out, listening, doing receiving, transmitting, all these things are taking place. Once that happens, now we start building a relationship. We start intuning ourselves for communication so we can have a clearer understanding. We start resonating. We start having this frequency of sound between us. And we spent a lot of time in this process because a lot of people don't really have a great relationship with the power of resonance and sound. And it's important that we do, because this is going to be a springboard. Sound will be a springboard for our new technologies that'll come on. We don't have that great of a relationship with sound as we do with electricity. So sound has a lot to do with magnetism, with silver, with these type of concepts will play a role in our lives moving forward. Technology with sound, levitation. These things come out of this wonderful, cymatics, healing, anti-aging technologies. All these things are born from the technology of sound. Plays a critical role. As above, so below. There's 88 constellations, 88 keys on a piano, right? They're all in relationship, 7 days of the week. So these systems, these cycles are all built into our bodies. So we discussed a lot about that. Then we moved on in the learning of the elemental hypertech. We went from the relationship portion of it to the causal. And in the causal, I think I forgot one. No, we went to the mental after that. Yes, we went to the mental. And the mental was important because this is where we understand how endurance plays a role, inspiration, motivation, wind in our sails. These kind of concepts became important for us. And then we had like this linear component to it that we brought on. So that way you can understand how the mental processes work, because it's based off evidence. Then we move to the causal, which is the compassionate side of it. So you hear the idea, do what thy will shall be the whole of the law. That is a mental component. Do what thy will shall be the whole of the law, but you shall do it with compassion, empathy, and sympathy. Now you've taken that to a new level of understanding. Your magic has now become solid, become strong, crushing. When you add compassion. And we spent a tremendous amount of time discussing this incredible power as opposed to the force of the mental energy. So there is a difference. There is the magnetic causal and the electric mental. So we spent a lot of time here as creatures of the earth in this electromagnetic component of the mental and the causal. This is reality, is the friction between these two. So this was discussed at length for you. Then we moved on to the fire, right? I love this. This is intuition itself, the ability without reasoning, where it's just raw talent and skill because of your desires are so great. You are giving everything that you have in every moment. So the world has no choice but to respond to you in kind. If you give little, you get little. If you give a lot, you get a lot. It's a simple mathematical formula. This is spiritual math that we have been discussing here on the psychic side of things, the internal nature, instead of the external world, which you can find when you look around. So we spent some time with that one. Then we moved on to what I would call the law of goodness, the principled component to everything, where you add your own system of, if you want to call it morality and ethics, that's a very loaded term in many ways. But really, this section is about how you have natural law in your life that we all abide by, that we all follow. And this natural law plays a role in all of our lives, right? We all breathe, we all die, we all defecate, we all do these things that are part of natural law. So we have to play by those rules. But within that, if you harmonize with nature's laws and their laws become your laws, you now have what's called an organization of goodness and kindness, because you understand the sovereignty and the uniqueness of all things living and how that is uncorruptible, and things that are uncorruptible are incredibly beautiful, plain and simple. And it's the beauty in which you recognize inside and out. And that is pretty much where we stop, because with the principled aspects, it's also about judgment, curiosity, defining things and limiting things with words. Okay? It gives you your definitions, your refinements. It is a way to aim at your target, right? And after this, which we haven't discussed, is when we go into the next level, we should do them all. Yeah, when we go to the next level, which we haven't really discussed too much about, this is the heart itself. This is your understanding. What utterance is, and how important your words and your spells are. Then we can talk about the consciousness itself and how it's full. And that is the wisdom, where you now live a loved life, one with joy and purpose. After that, you have the memory and access levels, the storage, where it's all held, where everything is seen, heard, smelled, tasted. All the elements store memory on that level. And that is how a remote viewer or somebody who has access through love of life into the world, this is what they access. The full attention of the memory bank of existence itself, which will lead you to the 11th, which people call the third absolute. And then the 12th would be the second absolute. Because like yin and yang, there is black and white, there is masculine and feminine, there is active, there is passive, there is up, there is down, left and right. There's all these different aspects, but there's one aspect that is forgotten, which is you. How you play a role in all of this. And that you are the center of your universe. What does your world look like? Which would lead us to the 13th, which is the unmanifested absolute.